Good day, students. You are welcome to the online class. How was your holiday? This is Afia Ademola Johnson, your biology tutor. We want to start with SS1 biology from where we stopped in the last class. In the previous class, the last topic we were discussing was the characteristics of living things, and we started from movement. We have defined movement as the change in the position of an organism, and we said that there are three types of movement. We stated the various reasons for movement, and we ended up talking about the types of movement. So we have three types of movement. We have nastic movement, we have tactic movement, and we have tropic movement. So we have discussed nastic movement. Today we are discussing tactic movement or tacticism. Tactic movement. Tactic movement. You either call it tactic movement or you call it tacticism. You either call it tactic movement or you call it tacticism. When we're talking about tactic movement or tacticism, now we are talking about this is the directional movement of parts, of the whole body parts, of an organism. Now, in response to a directional stimulus. If you look at this definition, it's quite different from nastic movement in the previous way. Let's look at the differences. Between nastism and tacticism. Now, here I have nastism, and here we have tacticism. Number one thing to look at, in the case of nastism that we discussed in the previous class, I told you that this one in nastism only parts of the body of the organism is involved. But here, the whole body parts of the organism is involved. That's why here I said this is the directional movement of the whole body. But the nasty thing that we discussed, it was not the whole body. That I gave you two examples. The first of it is Mimosa pudica. The leaflet of Mimosa pudica, when you touch it, it closes. Only the leaflet is involved in the movement, not the whole body parts of the sensitive plant. Now let's move on. Let's go on. In this page now, let's call this on page 2. Let's continue from that place. Now, number 2 points here. Look at the definition here. This is a directional movement. The movement is directional. But in the case of narcissism, the movement is non-directional. So here now you say non-directional movement is involved. But here, directional movements is involved. in here, what about the stimulus? Here I said is the directional movement of the whole body parts of an organism in response to a word, directional. You started with directional here, you end up with directional stimulus. You started with directional movement and you end up with what? Directional stimulus. So unlike Nasic movement in those cases is non-directional movement of part of the body of the organism in response to a non-directional stimulus. So here, now, the stimulus is non-directional. But here, the stimulus is directional. Then another one here, this one, it only involves plants. The two examples I gave, Mimosa pudica and 4 o'clock plants, the two of them are plants. Here, it involves both plants and animals. Take note of that. Then number 5. In the case of Nasic movement, response, now the stimulus only lights and touch, stimuli are involved. You will see that when I was talking about Mimosa pudica, when you touch the leaflet of Mimosa pudica, the leaf only responds to that touch. Then in the case of 4 o'clock plant, in the morning when there is sunlight, the flower opens. Then in the evening at dusk, around 4 o'clock, when there is no sunlight again, the flower collapses. So that flower is only sensitive to what? Sensitive to light. So only light and touch are involved. But here, now light, touch, chemical, water, and then more than this, water, temperature. The stimulus involved, stimuli involved. So take note of that. So these are the differences between Nasic movement. So let's go to types of taxism. Types of taxism. Now let's look at the various types of taxism. Number 1, we have positive and negative. Positive and negative phototaxism or phototactic movements or phototactic movements. Number 2, we have haptotaxism or haptotactic movements. Which is also known as, aka, is also known as tigmotaxism or tigmotactic movement. So number 3, that's positive and negative. Number 3, we have positive and negative chemotaxism. Positive and negative chemotaxism or chemotactic movement. Then number 4, we have positive and negative hydrotaxism or hydrotactic movement. Now, so yes, now let's now look at them one after the other. Let's look at them one after the other. Now, let's talk about the first one, positive phototaxism. Now, anytime you come across the word photo means light. You say this is the directional movement of the whole body parts, of an organism towards the source of light. So if an organism is moving its whole body parts towards the source of light, that is positive. If it's moving away, that's negative. Example is what? The movement of Euglena viridis. Movement of Euglena viridis from deeper parts of water body of a pond to the shallow parts with what? Exposed. That is exposed to sunlight. What am I trying to say here? If you go to ponds or river, you will discover that the sunlight can only go a little depth in the river. So the Euglena might go to the deeper part to eat some food. And when he discovers he wants to carry out photosynthesis with his chloroplast, he goes to the shallower part of the pond to receive. So the movement towards that light now is what? Positive phototaxism. And he's moving his whole body part. Now let's go to negative phototaxism. Now this movement away, this is the directional movement of the whole body parts of an organism away from the source of light. Example is the movement of clavidomonas. Clavidomonal cell. The movement of clavidomonal cell from the shallow parts of the river exposed to sunlight to the deeper parts of the river without sunlight. Why is he doing that? To escape predation. So it might be that it has seen a very big fish that wants to swallow it. So it runs for its dear life. So that is that. Then we have positive haptotropism. Haptotaxism. Positive haptotaxism. In this one, this is the directional movement of the whole body part of an organism towards the source of touch, stimulus. Now, let me give you an example. An example is if a snake is stepped on by the feet of an animal, a small animal, what happens to the snake? The snake turns its head towards the small animal that steps on its tail to bite it. So that is response to touch. Then we have negative haptotropism or taxism. Haptotaxism or haptotatic movement. This is the directional movement of the whole body parts of an organism away from the touch stimulus. Somebody slaps you and you run away from the hand that slaps you. What you have just demonstrated is negative haptotaxism. So you have demonstrated negative haptotaxism. Now, we see how positive and negative chemotaxism, positive and negative hydrotaxism. So, let's quickly look at positive hydrotaxism. Now, this is the directional movements of the whole body parts of an organism towards the source of water slips from your hand and it swims, it struggles itself from the ground towards this water. So anytime you come across hydro, it means what? Water. So moving towards water is what? Positive hydrotaxism. Then we have negative hydrotaxism. This is the movement of the directional movement of the whole body parts of an organism against water source. You are going, an example is when somebody is going on the street and rain starts falling, and you run away from that water, from the rain water, under a shed where there is no rain. Running away from water is negative hydrotaxism. Then we have positive chemotaxism. Now, this is the directional movements of the whole body parts. The whole body parts of an organism towards the source of chemical such as food, egg, cells, etc. Now, example is the movement of sperms towards eggs at oviduct. So in reproduction, when ejaculation occurs and sperms are been deposited in the vagina, they do not wait there, they swim towards egg cell in the oviduct. So an egg can be categorized as a chemical. So also when an organism moves towards food, the energy stored in food is chemical energy. So food can also be regarded as what? As a chemical. So the movement towards food is also what? Positive what? Chemotactic movement. So lastly, in this class, let's look at negative chemotaxism. Now this is the directional movement of the whole body parts, of an organism away from chemical source, chemical stimulus. When an animal has finished eating and is full, and it moves away from its food to another place where there is no food, that is negative chemotaxism. So we are going to stop here for today. Please attend to your classwork and send the answer to my WhatsApp number 070 30 39 35 31. I remain my humble self, Afe Ademola Johnson. Thank you. God bless you.